How to Train Your Dragon was a 2010 American fantasy film about the coexistence of ancient Vikings and dragons. It was a DreamWorks animation that took place in the mythical village of Berk and focused on a certain boy who we shall discuss, and his journey to acquire a dragon best friend called Toothless. It originated from the USA and generated over $490 million in the box office, and today we shall discuss the major characters who featured in the franchise, who they were and what role they played, then later talk a little about the people behind the scenes and behind the voices, who they are and how old they have gotten in 2025. We start with a boy named Hiccup Horrendous Haddock, who was the son of the chief of Berk, and was 15 years old when we first saw him. He was not built like the other Vikings and was smaller and skinnier than the rest. He was rather an intelligent lad who always came up with amazing inventions, and was a boy who was always there for his friends. He always wanted to prove himself to his tribe, and this made him braver and more courageous than the others. He also had a crush on a lady who we shall look at later, and was seen always trying to impress her, mostly in times of trouble. A boy voiced by Jay Baruchel, a Canadian actor and director who has been married ever since 2019, and was also seen in the comedy film known as The Fanboys. Hiccup's father was known as Stoick the Vast, and was also the chief and leader of the hooligan tribe. He was 45 years old in 2010, and was a man with a strong sense of responsibility to his people and son. He loved his son so much, and spent most of his life and career trying to make a man out of Hiccup. He was also the one who led the troops in ambushing the dragons, and was a sworn enemy to the beasts, but this changed when he got to train and ride his very own dragon called Horrendous. He sadly passed in the second film and was 50 years old at the time. He was voiced by the amazing Gerard Butler, a Scottish actor and film producer who also studied law, and has been in very many movies and television shows. His next film project shall be the live action of How to Train Your Dragon, and shall be playing the same exact role. Astrid Hofferson was a female Viking who was a good friend and the love interest of Hiccup. She was also 15 years old in the first film, and was an extremely bright girl who was so devoted to her cause. She was so competitive by nature, and the fact that she was a girl made her work even more harder for others to take her serious. She took life in an immense way, and worked hard to become a better fighter. She was also driven by emotions, and always wanted to exalt the name of her family during those challenging and competitive days. She was also a loyal friend, especially to Hiccup, and was seen to save him and follow his lead in every adventure. She was voiced by the beautiful America Ferrera, who is an American actress and a television producer who has won a few awards like the Primetime Emmy Award and a Screen Actors Guild Award during her prime years. Ruffnut Thorston was a good friend of Hiccup and one of the main characters in the film. She had a twin brother who we shall also discuss, and was a girl with some tomboy traits. She was a Viking just like anybody else, and was mostly known to be irresponsible and anarchic. She always wrestled with her twin brother, and was always quarreling with him for minor reasons. Either way, they loved each other, and would do anything when it came to their mission. Voiced by Kristen Carol Wigg, who is an American actress and a comedian too, mostly associated with the Los Angeles comedy troupe. Snotlout Jorgenson, just like Hiccup and Astrid, was also 15 years old, and was a boy who was arrogant most of the time. He had delusions that he was a perfectionist and was the most attractive person in the land. He was always on the wrong side of the law, and never wanted to admit or take responsibilities for his actions. An egotistic boy who always considered himself to be the smartest and strongest of all the riders. Even after all that is said, he was quite a good fighter and smarter than others thought he was. A boy voiced by Jonah Hill, a man most notable for his roles in comedy movies and animations. Tuffnut was Ruffnut's twin brother, and was actually the dominant of them both. He and his sister loved to get into trouble, and it was actually him who was always causing trouble and starting fights with Ruffnut. He was also a good fighter, and would never miss a chance to boast how good he was and how deadly his weapon is. He was not intelligent, and always had difficulty paying attention to simple tasks. He was voiced by Todd Joseph Miller, a stand-up comedian and an actor who was recently spotted in Deadpool playing the role of Weasel and also in the sitcom called Silicon Valley with the role of Ehrlich Bachman. Fishlegs Ingerman was a clumsy and an awkward boy who was the best friend of Hiccup. He was always seen making mistakes at inappropriate moments, and was somewhat a coward boy who always fled trouble. He was very loyal to Hiccup, and would sometimes fight his own fears to help his friends when situations were critical. He rode a dragon called Meatlug, and due to his size, he was strong and good in hand-to-hand combat, and was also the one who knew quite much about dragons and their distinctive traits. He was voiced by Christopher Charles Mintz-Plasse, an American actor. Gobber the Belch was a veteran warrior of the Hairy Hooligan tribe and the best friend of Stoick the Vast. He was 50 years old, and was a very talented blacksmith who also acted as the mentor to Hiccup. He was a large and muscular Viking with a bald head and a thick mustache, and was rather a grouchy person who had the tendency of cracking jokes, and always boasted how he had never been defeated in battle. He was a kind-hearted man who also had a soft spot for those he cared about, and was a man who acted as the chief's right-hand man and his voice of reason. Voiced by Craig Ferguson, a Scottish-American actor, comedian, and television host. Snotlout Jorgenson was the father of Snotlout and the chief's second-in-command. He rode a dragon by the name Kingstail, and was a man who took great pride in his son, and was the one who pressured and encouraged him to be a great Viking fighter. He was a perfectionist and a man who never tolerated weakness, and was always trying to prove how great he was to the others. He was strong and a man with skilled fighting moves, and also a worthy dragon trainer. He was voiced by David Tennant, a Scotsman who is one of the people who played Doctor in Doctor Who, and is blessed with a son named Ty Tennant. Starkard was a hairy hooligan who was first seen taking part in the Dragon War, and was also seen and heard in a few scenes meeting with other Viking generals to discuss the dragon calamity in Berk. His beard was kind of dark blonde and always wore a helmet with short upright horns from that of a yak. A man voiced by Philip McGrade, who is a British actor and writer that also appeared in the second movie in 2014. Hork the Haggard was a Viking living on the Isle of Berk, and was one of the higher-ranked Vikings who was primarily the trainer of the younger Vikings. He was the one who helped in training the dragons and pairing them with the riders. He was also one of the most skillful Vikings who had the knowledge of the dragons and their behavior towards different circumstances. Ak was also another hairy hooligan who partook in the war against the dragons. He was a fighter whose energy and enthusiasm was unmatched, and was also a brave man who never ran from fights and war. And finally, Phlegma the Fierce, a courageous female Viking who was the botanist at the School of Dragons. She was one of the teachers who taught the young Vikings about the outside world, and was heard teaching about the need to respect and understand nature.